Hey, welcome to another episode of Homeschooling with Zena. And my name is Randy, and this is my daughter. Hi, Zena. So today we're doing lesson 11, Heroes and Monsters. And I also have something where we have the lesson objectives. They give you a workbook, K-12, and this is called History 2. Well, History Part 2 is History 1. So, it says, demonstrate mastery of important knowledge and skills taught in this unit. Identify Perseus as the hero in a Greek myth who slays the monster Medusa. Define heroes in Greek myths as strong, brave characters who do amazing deeds. Explain that some Greek myths are about heroes and monsters. Locate the Mediterranean Sea on the globe. Explain that Greece was made up of many city-states. So it's a lot of objectives here. I'm not going to read all of them because it's like 15. All right. So all right. So it says some of the ancient Greek myths are. How about you read this, Zena?
Some of the ancient Greek myths.
Can you say louder?
Some of the ancient Greek myths are about battle monsters and heroes.
It says some of the ancient Greek myths are about battles, monsters, and heroes.
In ancient Greece,
Ancient.
Greece, a hero had to be brave, strong, and able to do amazing deeds.
Okay. Very good. All right. So let's see what we have here. Okay. So last time we heard a Greek myth about a girl named, what was her name? Remember the last lesson?
Last lesson.
There was a girl who liked to weave. She turned into a spider. What was her name?
Um,
Arach.
Arachnid.
Okay. So last time we heard a Greek myth about a girl named Arachne who thought she was a better weaver than the Greek goddess. Who was the goddess that turned her into a spider?
Athena.
Good, very good. Then the Greek goddess Athena. Do you remember what creature Athena turned Arachne into?
Spider.
Very good. We also heard a myth about King Midas. What power did he wish for?
The golden touch.
Very good. Which very important person turned to gold when he touched her?
Oh. His son.
You sure it was his son?
Oh, his daughter. Yeah.
Did King Midas want to keep the golden touch after that?
No.
No. Why not?
Because then he can never, because he learned a lesson that there's many things that's more important than gold.
Okay, very good. We've learned that the Greeks believed in many gods and goddesses, They told stories about the gods to explain the way the world worked. What are the stories called?
Myths.
Good. The ancient Greeks also told myths about great battles, terrible monsters, and brave heroes. In many myths, the hero was strong and brave and did incredible deeds. Why don't you read this here?
Sometimes the gods and goddesses would help the hero or give him
Advice.
but the hero had to fight the monster, win the battle, or save the city on his own.
On his own, right? What type of characters can be found in ancient Greek myths?
God, hero, monsters.
Very good. Now, if you want to know if it's right or wrong, you just
Press
click on
answer
it.
key.
Good. So now, use this thing. This is better for using mouse. Okay, so today we're going to hear an exciting story about a terrible monster named Medusa and a brave hero named Perseus.
Medusa.
Medusa.
P-C-S.
Very good.
Perseus and Medusa. There was once a beautiful princess named Danae, and she had a little baby boy by the name of Perseus. Now Danae had angered her father, the king, who was a cruel man, and he decided to do away with her and the baby. "But I will not kill her myself," he said. "I will set Danae and Perseus the baby into a great wooden chest and drop it into the sea, and surely it will sink and they will die." And that's what he did. But the chest was so well made, the wood fitted so tightly together, that instead of sinking, the great wooden chest floated like a ship. And it floated for some days until it washed up onto the wide, white beach of an island far away. And there a fisherman found it. He was surprised to see a beautiful carved chest on the beach, but even more surprised when he opened it and found inside a beautiful woman and a little baby boy. The fisherman could see that they were hungry and weak, and so he helped them from the chest and brought them home to his home. And he fed them and gave them things to drink and helped them to become healthy again. During the days that he helped them, the fisherman found that he came to love Danae, and she came to care for him also. And finally he said to her, "Stay, please, and be my wife, and we will raise Perseus as though he were my own son." "I have come to care for you also," said Danae. "Yes, let us marry." And that's what happened. And so that's where Perseus grew up. And he grew up straight and tall and to be a great athlete. He was intelligent, too, which doesn't always hold true with heroes. But most of all, he was a good and honest man. When Perseus was about 18, the king of the island came through that part of the area. And the king's name was Polydectes. Polydectes saw Danae, who was still very beautiful, and he wanted her for himself. "But," said Polydectes, "I am afraid of this young Perseus. He looks too strong, and he's too crafty, too smart for me. I must get him out of the way first. Then I can have Danae for myself, for surely the simple fisherman will not present a problem." And so he pretended to be a friend to Perseus, pretended to take an interest in him, even asked him to come back and live in the palace. And after Perseus had come to trust King Polydectes, one day the king said to him, "Perseus, it is obvious to me that you are destined to be a great hero. Unfortunately, our little island offers no use for a great hero like you. So I suggest that to make your name you should leave here and go on some great adventure. Now let me see. What might you be able to do? I have it. You shall be the one to kill Medusa. Medusa. Who was Medusa? Medusa had been a beautiful woman, but a woman with no love in her. Cold, cruel, uncaring, she lived with her two sisters, the Gorgons, who were almost as horrible as she. At last, the goddess of love, Aphrodite, grew angry with the three sisters, and she took revenge upon them. Where hair had grown from their heads, now there grew twisting, writhing snakes, and she gave the three sisters wings and long teeth like beasts and claws where their fingernails had been. But she could do nothing about their cold, loveless souls. And now the worst thing of all happened. For if you looked upon the face of Medusa, you turned to stone. When Medusa and her two sisters wanted anything, they flew down to a place where it might be, let us say a farmhouse if they were hungry. And they would walk into the kitchen, and the people would turn to see who had walked in, and they would look at Medusa's face, and at once they were stone statues. And Medusa and her sisters would take the food they wanted and anything else, and they didn't care about how cruel they were being. Medusa and her sisters were not affected by the magic, and could not turn to stone, and they cared about no one else. So this was the cruel monster King Polydectes wanted to send Perseus after. Surely, if you can kill Medusa, you will be the most famous and admired hero in all the world, said Polydectes. And Perseus, thinking the king was his friend, decided he would try. But remember, he was a good young man, and so that night he prayed to the gods for help. And two of them appeared, Athena, cleverest of all the goddesses, and Hermes, the messenger god, who could fly through the sky with his sandals that had wings on them. You shall need help, said Hermes. Here, you may borrow my winged sandals, and that way you may fly as easily as Medusa and her sisters fly. And here, said Athena, remember that if you look upon Medusa's face, you will turn to stone. I have something you may use, Perseus. And she handed him a shield polished so brightly on the front and the back that it shone like a mirror. Perseus, said Athena, you must look in the shield when you fight Medusa. Only look at her reflection, and then you will not turn to stone. But that means, my lady, that I shall have to fight backwards, said Perseus. That will take some practice. Well then, practice until you know you can do it. And that's what Perseus did. He thanked Athena and Hermes for the gifts, and he practiced fighting backwards with his sword, looking only in the mirror shield. Finally, he decided that he could do it. And so one day, he bid goodbye to King Polydectes, and to his mother, the beautiful Danae, and to his stepfather, the kind fisherman. And then, as everyone watched in surprise, he lifted up into the skies with the winged sandals and scooted off across the sea to the land where Medusa lived. Now the three sisters lived high on a mountaintop, and Perseus landed partway up the mountain because he didn't want to run into them facing forward. He didn't want to see Medusa's face. He landed, and he lifted the shield, and he climbed the rest of the way backwards, until he came to a great wide meadow, and there he saw the three sisters sleeping in the sun. He took his sword from the scabbard, and still looking only in the mirror shield, he tiptoed back through the field until he was only a few feet away from them. And then one of the sisters yawned and stretched and turned. Perseus stayed very still and quiet. She went back to sleep. Perseus moved towards the sisters, but he was looking so carefully at them, he didn't see some stones in the grass, and he kicked them over, and they made a little noise. And the sister woke up and looked straight at him and yelled, "Help! Help! We're being attacked!" And then all three sisters were up and at Perseus. They were trying to bite him and scratch him and kick him. They flew all around him. But he had on the winged sandals, and he too could fly. What a battle it must have been! Up, down, to the left, to the right, to the land, into the air, always trying to keep Medusa from getting in front of him, as she tried to do, always keeping her in back, looking at her only in the mirrored shield, thrashing his sword here and there to keep the sisters away, until finally he saw his opening, and he leaped back, and with a mighty slash of the sword, he cut off Medusa's head. The two other sisters fell back with a cry, and in that moment, still looking only in the shield, he reached back and he grabbed that snaky hair, and he put Medusa's head into a cloth sack that he had hanging from his belt. And then he leaped straight up into the air, and the two sisters, recovering, came after him crying, "Vengeance! Vengeance! We shall kill you now!" But Perseus had a head start, and he headed straight into a large bank of clouds. The two sisters thought he would keep going, and they flew right by him. But he stopped and waited for them to pass. And then he turned around and went back the way he had come. Now you'd think that would be the whole adventure, but far from it. For on the way back to the island where he lived with his mother Danae and his stepfather the fisherman, and where the cruel King Polydectes even now was chasing Danae and trying to make her his own, on the way back, Perseus flew over a coastline, and down below he saw a strange sight. He saw a beautiful young woman chained to a rock at the edge of the sea. Perseus flew down to get a closer look, and then he landed on the rock beside her. You can imagine how surprised she was to see a man drop out of the blue like that. "What is wrong?" said Perseus. "Why are you here? Who are you?" And she told him. Her name was Andromeda, and Andromeda was a princess in this place. But her parents, the king and queen, had caused offense to Poseidon, king and god of the sea. Poseidon was insulted, and so he stopped all the rain from falling on the king and queen's land, and the people were beginning to starve and go thirsty. And the only way he would send the rain back was if the king and queen took their daughter Andromeda and chained me here to this rock," said Andromeda. "And soon a great sea monster will come and eat me, and I must give my life for the people of my country." Perseus said, "Well, the gods may get insulted, but they are fair. Surely if I can kill this sea monster and save you, that will do the same." "But how can you do that?" "Watch," said Perseus, and he freed Andromeda from her chains and waited. Soon, far out at sea, they saw a great wave building, getting closer and closer, and then suddenly the water at the foot of the rock began to boil and bubble, and then the beast burst from the water. It was green and yellow and horrible, and it came straight for them with open jaws. But Perseus, with his sword in his hand, leaped from the rock using the winged sandals, and began to spin and weave around the head of the great beast. The beast roared in anger. Perseus charged down, to the left, to the right. Always the monster was after it, always Perseus was just out of range. And then once again, as he had done with Medusa, he saw his opening. Down he fell. He plummeted towards the very belly of the monster, and he plunged in his sword. With a roar of pain, the monster sank beneath the waves and was gone forever. Perseus and Andromeda went back to her parents, the king and queen of that place, who were overjoyed to find their daughter alive and the monster gone. And they had a great feast in honor of Perseus. And he stayed there for a time, and he and Andromeda fell deeply in love and married. And the king said, "Perseus, after me you shall be king of this land." Perseus said, "Thank you, but I must go back and tell my mother and my father, the fishermen, where I shall be." And so, carrying the sack with the head of Medusa, he flew back across the sea to the island once more. But he found that Danae and the fishermen were in the temple of Athena, hiding. King Polydectes had tried to take Danae for himself, and the two of them had hidden in the temple, knowing that the king would be afraid to offend the goddess and come after them. "Do not worry, mother," said Perseus. "I shall deal with this false friend, King Polydectes." And now, holding the sack, he went to the royal palace. And inside he found Polydectes, who was having a great party with his evil friends. When he walked into the throne room, the king spun around and saw him. It's Perseus," said the king in fear. Guards, seize him!" But before anyone could move towards him, Perseus reached into the sack, and then closing his own eyes, he lifted high the head of Medusa. And there he held it for several seconds, out in the air for all to see, and put it back into the sack. And when once again he opened his own eyes, he found that everyone else in that throne room had turned to stone. Well, the people of the island had never really cared for cruel King Polydectes, and they made Danae and the fishermen queen and king after them. And Perseus flew back to his beloved Andromeda. But he returned the gifts to the gods, of course, thanking them deeply. He gave the winged sandals back to Hermes, and the mirror shield back to Athena, and also he gave Medusa's head to Athena. And Athena hung it on the front of her shield, and kept it covered, and from then on, whenever she was in battle, she would lift the cover when she was fighting her enemies. And that is the story of Perseus, but you should know the ending. He and Andromeda lived, truly, happily ever after. They had a long life together, and were always deeply in love. And they had children, and those children had children. And one of those grandchildren was Hercules, greatest of all the ancient heroes. But that is another story.
So, that was a very interesting story, right, Zena? Okay, so maybe we're going to have some questions after that. Ooh, you have another one. Okay, so what did Medusa look like?
He looks like a snake.
Mm-hmm.
Snake monster.
Mm-hmm. What does her hair looks like?
Snake.
Mm-hmm. What happened to people who looked at the face of Medusa?
They turn to stone.
Oh, why did they turn to stone?
Because they look at the face of Medusa.
And because her heart was made of stone, right? She was very cruel. What was the name of the hero who battled Medusa?
Perseus.
Good. What did the god Hermes give Perseus to make him fly?
Two wings.
Like a pair of
Wings.
winged sandals.
Winged sandals.
Yeah, those are like shoes that we can see your toes. We call those sandals.
And there are two wings there?
Yeah, on the sandals so he can fly.
Mm-hmm.
What did Athena give Perseus so he didn't have to look at Medusa?
A mirror shield.
Yes, very good. It was very polished, right? Perseus was a hero. Tell me about one of his brave deeds. What did he do?
He fought Medusa
Okay.
and
What?
the Kraken.
The Kraken, right? Yeah. What did he do to the Kraken?
Well, but since it's not like the movie,
Yeah. Well, we saw the movie Clash of the Titans, the newest one. I think that out in 2012, and that one is a different story than what this story is. So, in the Kraken one, well, in the Clash of the Titans, he actually takes the Medusa's head and turns the monster into stone. But in this one, what did he do?
he used the sword
Mm-hmm.
and killed the monster.
Right. So it's different. All right. What is this? The face of terror. Okay. This is Medusa, I guess. Let me see if it has some sound.
Medusa is shown in many works of Greek art. Legend has it that no one survived a glimpse of Medusa's evil gaze and writhing snaky hair.
So I guess that's Athena's shield, right? That's Athena's shield. Okay. The face of terror. Would you be frightened of such a sight? What do we call a character like Perseus who was brave and strong and did amazing deeds? What do we call a character like Perseus? Yes, very good. Some myths have monsters in them. Tell me about Medusa.
She only care about herself and her sister too.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone that look at her will turn into stone.
Mm-hmm. Do you like Medusa? Why?
I think she just looks pretty.
You think she looks pretty?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yes.
So do you like Perseus or Medusa more?
Medusa.
Wow. Why? So you like her. What do we call the stories that the ancient Greeks told about heroes, monsters, and the gods and goddesses?
Myth.
Very good. Relax. All right, so now sometimes they instruct you to do some other kind of work. There are materials that you should gather or print for the next activity. We do have colored pencils, so I don't know what would that be right now. And then you can ask your student to tell in 2 or 4 sentences what the lesson was about. Use questions to prompt him. If he needs help, he only needs to include the most important points in the lesson, which we pretty much did. Okay, so I usually kind of skip this. It's not important.
Teacher tip. Teacher tip.
Okay, so you can ask them to write about it. So I might have her do that, just to write like 3 or 4 sentences. Okay, so there's some activity. Like I said, I usually don't do the activity.
The pencil.
unless it's like really interesting. You don't really need to do that. I find my own activity, or we find our own activity,
What
like
is
the for this one with Medusa, we just watched Clash of the Titans,
huh?
right?
What they want
We
us
watched
to
the
do?
movie.
What they want us to do?
Uh, it's like you gotta make something with paper, scissors, and glue, but I think it's too messy, you know. Yeah, it's kind of too messy. I think they want you to make a Medusa's head out of a paper plate, which we don't have. We're in China, so some of the things is kind of,
Hard to find.
yeah. You can see my 8-year-old. It's hard for her to stay in the seats, so that's why we thought that homeschooling is better, because in China the kids must sit like this, and everybody must sit properly. Xena is unable to do that. Like, she's moving around, so the teachers have a lot of problems with her. So this is a big reason why we do homeschooling. And I think homeschooling is good for certain children. Like, it's good for me and my daughter. So we get to spend a lot of time together. So I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. And yeah, I hope you can do the next lesson. So this is just an assessment. So it's just the questions that we asked already. So I guess we can just do this. Like, Xena can do this. Okay. But I think it has to, like with the assessment sheet, it already has the answer, so she can't do it by herself. She has to do it in a book. So, oh, wait a minute.
This don't have an answer.
Okay, good. All right, go ahead. So this is like a unit assessment.
This body of water was very important to the ancient Greeks. They sail on its water to travel.
What is that noise?
Mediterranean Sea.
Okay, click on it.
It's like
Use your fingers.
up there is doing things. What was Greece made up of?
I'm gonna move this so you can. I'm gonna move this so you can have some room.
There's many farms, so they have food to eat.
No, I wouldn't say many farms. You remember what he said about how that God threw?
Yes.
It was made up
A
of.
single country.
Nope.
Many city-states.
Yes. Use your fingers here. It's better. Can you read that?
Which home did the Greek gods have? Mount Olympus.
Good.
Who fought each other in the Trojan War?
Yeah.
Greeks and Trojans. What do we call stories that explain how things came to be? Myths. Myths.
Good.
Which of these phrases
Which of these phrases?
come from the Greek myth about King Midas? Fever touch golden eggs.
Very good. You gotta do 14 of these, so.
What did the ancient Greeks believe in. Many gods. Which game did the ancient Greeks
Give the world.
were?
We didn't do that yet. So just say, what do you think it is? Which game did the ancient Greeks give the world?
I think maybe Olympus,
Very good. Why?
because soccer and football are not made in that time.
Okay. Yes, very good.
Were some Greek myths about?
Very good.
Okay.
Who was the king of the Greek gods? Very good.
What is the poem called?
The
Iliad. Tell the story
Do you remember?
of Trojan War.
Very good.
Who was the Greek
Poet.
the Odysseus?
The Odyssey. Yeah.
Homer.
Very good.
What was the Trojan horse?
Very good. Excellent.
Who was Perseus? A hero in a Greek.
Very good. Yeah. So now you submit. So I'd say you got about like a 90 something because the first one you kind of was wrong, but excellent. Good. So we're going to leave you now. Very good job, Zena. And what you going to say? Goodbye. All right, guys. Goodbye. And yeah. Hope you come back for another episode.